Well, here it comes, another San Fran ban. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, the City of San Francisco Board of Supervisors just voted last night as we record this to ban the use by the police department and other city departments of facial recognition software in public places. Bill, I just first want to get your instant reaction to what you think of this.
I like it.
And tell me why.
Well, because I don't want to live in a surveillance state. I don't want to live in a police state, and I don't want to live in a state. When I say state, I don't mean the state of California, although we're certainly well on our way to becoming as close to a police state as we have in America anyway so far. I don't want to be surveilled everywhere I go. As a matter of fact, you make a pretty compelling case that this is the single great threat to American life as we know it, is this idea that we have to be careful about what we say or do or where we go or when, because so much information is being recorded.
So, Bill, one of the supervisors on the San Francisco board says, and I quote, we can have security without being a security state. We can have good policing without being a police state. And part of that is building trust with the community based on good community information, not big brother technology.
Wow.
But Bill, doesn't this just, and by the way, that was Supervisor Aaron Peskin who championed the legislation. Doesn't this just shift the burden upon an already overburdened police department and grant the bad guys this cloak of anonymity upon which they so rely?
It does grant the bad guys the cloak of anonymity upon which they so rely, and it also grants the good guys the cloak of anonymity upon which they so rely.
How so?
Well, you should have the right. It's built into the American character that we are not automatons under the constant surveillance of the state so that the state can step in and take corrective measures. And I think probably in terms of national character, the best example I can think of this is related to speeding laws. It is an exceedingly simple matter. You don't even need GPS technology to put a series of strips down any highway and record the speed of a car. Certainly with GPS, it's even much easier. You can record the speed of a car. You can allow 4 or 5 miles an hour for just general variance and so on, and just immediately begin automatically issuing tickets for speeding that would have absolutely no basis to be challenged in court. They're recorded to within a foot accuracy by GPS, and therefore we would be able to enforce speeding laws. But we simply won't tolerate that in this country. We won't. And that's because of the nature of the American character. And it's, I don't know, it might have been you said it, Scotty or Steve Green, but it's something like, okay, if I'm speeding, I admit I'm breaking the law, but it's your obligation to catch me. And this fundamental freedom from this, it's not a freedom from law, and it's not a freedom from consequences. I drive faster than the speed limit. I used to before I got married anyway. But like most people, I'm certainly willing to face the consequences. If I'm going too fast and a policeman pulls me over, I'm going to have to pay a ticket. If I'm going real fast and showing him my pilot's license doesn't work, then I'm going to have to go to jail. And these are the consequences for my behavior, and I accept those consequences. I accept the fact that speeding is something that I'm willing to do because this is rationalization, but it's happens to be accurate as well, because the speed limit on a road is determined to be the maximum speed allowed under the worst conditions by the worst driver in the worst car, and I'm none of those things. So that doesn't give me the right to break the law. I want to be crystal clear on this. I'm breaking the law, and if I get caught, then I pay the price for it. But the idea that I would automatically be ticketed for any infraction, which is incredibly easy to do with the technology today, is repugnant to Americans and should be repugnant. It's not the job of the citizens of this country to behave themselves with the state watching to make sure that there are no possible deviations from compliance. This is the word of all the words in the 21st century, the one that really turns my stomach and makes my skin crawl is compliance. Compliance. Are you in full compliance? Are you in compliance with these dictates that we've set out.
Well, Bill, I think you'll find that this is not loathsome to all Americans. In fact, you living in California, above all people, should realize the value of technology and how it improves our society. Let me give you a quote from the guy who runs a nonprofit think tank in Washington, D.C. called Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. They issued a statement chiding the San Francisco Board of Supervisors when they were still just considering this legislation. And this foundation says that advanced technology makes it cheaper and faster for police to find suspects and identify missing people, and that critics are silly to compare surveillance usage in the United States with China, for example, given that one country has strong constitutional protections and the other does not.
What the hell good do our strong constitutional protections do us if it turns out you're employing facial recognition technology everywhere? Scott, there's a very simple way to understand this. It's exceedingly simple. So let's just walk through it. In virtually every country in the world where there is some form of law, there's a code Napoleonic, which is basically Napoleonic law, is the idea that if you are accused of a crime, you have to prove that you're innocent. In America, you're innocent until proven guilty, and that applies to the entire population. The entire population of the United States is innocent until proven guilty, and we do not need perpetual surveillance on a public whose overwhelming majority, by any standard, is law-abiding, decent, good, hard-working, tax-paying people. And to suggest that we could lower crime by tracking the movements of every single individual person and destroy the freedoms of every person in this country so we can catch a few more criminals is precisely the rationale behind the Soviet police state. And I'm not going there.
Well, perhaps
and you don't want to go there either.
This foundation's it's the foundation vice president, and in light of the following quote, you may think that he's ironically named. His name is Daniel Castro, and he says, and again quoting, "In reality, San Francisco is more at risk of becoming Cuba than China. A ban on facial recognition will make it frozen in time with outdated technology." Bill.
Oh my God! I have to say, Scott. This is our 165th show, and we've covered the subjects like this in freedom encroachment, and certainly we've covered California in very negative ways in San Francisco as a prime example of that. So let me say that after 165 episodes, I am resoundingly proud of what the San Francisco City Council did here. To say that we're not keeping up with technology is the same argument that will be applied when people try to put a chip inside you. Now, look, I actually gave this a fair amount of thought because I wrote a science fiction story where everybody has a very rice-sized transponder in them. And needless to say, I don't like that idea. But as part of having to write the story, I had to write in my head advertising campaigns for why this would be a good idea. I had to sell it to make it believable that people would actually accept these implants. And some of the things that I came up with is no longer do you have to worry about losing your wallet. You just go to the cash register. The machine senses your chip. It determines how much money you have in your bank account. All these transactions are painless. But much, much, much more important, if you're having a heart attack or an asthma attack or you're in a car accident, the chip would be able to immediately broadcast your medical condition and your location, and rescue would be able to be there in moments instead of searching for you or having you just die in an apartment someplace. Think of the benefits. And you can make this case, but the benefits are not even closely commensurate with the risk, and the risk is not just the physical risk of a police state. The risk is in, and by the way, speaking of California, having made my first positive comments about the state in 5 years, I now immediately have to begin the backtracking. The risk is not in the fact that policemen are going to come and kick your door down. The risk is in the belief that someday they might. And in California, you can't speak your mind in California. And the problem in California is not fear of the government. In California, if you say things, if you have a Donald Trump sticker on your car and you go to lunch in Santa Monica, chances are superb that your car will be defaced. It's criminal. It's just shocking and disgusting, but nevertheless, it's the truth. And so this ability to freely speak your mind is the essence of this country. I'm just now reading a book called In the Garden of Beasts about. Apparently, it's going to be made into a movie. I didn't know that until this morning. It's about Germany in 1934, an American ambassador's experiences in Germany in 1933-34. And they talk about how a number of other ambassadors and journalists would enjoy visiting the very humble home of the American ambassador because it was a space where you could speak your mind freely. And I thought, well, I mean, looking back at the history of Nazi Germany, you can see that, yes, I can see how the American ambassador's home in 1934 might be one of the few places in Germany where you can speak your mind freely. We're all supposed to be speaking our mind freely here. This whole country should be the American embassy in a sea of Berlin. And this is the secret to American success. It's the confidence and the risk taking that is the sense of risk taking is enabled by a sense that I can do something and I might fail at it spectacularly, and okay. I may say something stupid. I may say something that hurts somebody's feelings. Well, if I hurt somebody's feelings and I didn't mean to, I apologize. If I hurt somebody's feelings and I did mean to, pound sand. This is what makes this country work. And anything that suppresses the sense of people's ability to think and speak freely is anathema to the ideas behind America and to the actual functioning of America.
Well, Bill, I'm sure some of our members and viewers right now are struggling to make sense of your betrayal of the Republican Party by endorsing something done by the Supervisors Board in San Francisco. So I'm thinking maybe you just haven't fully considered one of the key arguments against this idea of banning facial recognition software by the police and departments in the city. And there are a couple of them, actually, that all kind of fit under one heading. First of all, the ban only applies to the police and city departments. It does not affect the federal government at airports or other ports of entry. It doesn't limit personal or business use of this technology. And so in reality, Bill, does anybody in the United States of America really go out in public with an expectation of privacy anymore?
That's a much better question. So again, let's kind of come back to our basic philosophy on this. The first time I ever heard of facial recognition technology would have been maybe the early 2000, maybe even the late 90s. And I was working as an editor for doing contract work for producers who were supplying shows to History Channel and Discovery Channel and so on. And I did a documentary on gambling, on the business of gambling, and facial recognition technology was just then starting to become a thing being employed in casinos. And I think this is an interesting example because facial recognition technology and cameras everywhere in a casino don't bother me. And the reason they don't bother me is because I am on somebody's private property and I accept the terms coming into the building. I know when I go into a casino in Las Vegas that my face is going to be scanned and that every action I take on the casino floor is going to be recorded from multiple angles.
Well, yes, it's a private property, Bill, but it's also a public accommodation that would fall under some restrictions that the federal government has placed on public accommodations. For example, they can't prevent somebody from having a room at that casino based on race. So it's not entirely a private entity, is it?
Well, of course it is. I mean, of course it is. I am willing to surrender certain freedoms when I walk through the door of Bellagio, let's say. And I'm willing to surrender these things. It's a knowing, volitional transaction that I'm making with the owners of the casino. I expect this to apply to the casino floor, and I'm not so naive to think that it doesn't apply to the lobby either. Needless to say, if I found out that there was a camera in the bedroom, we would have a very, very, very interesting lawsuit on our hands, which I still expect even in this day and age we would win handily. So I'm willing to make I'm willing to make that exchange in the same way I'm willing to make an exchange that I'm not going to be able to carry a firearm on board an airplane. I'm willing to make that exchange. Whether or not I should be willing to make that exchange is an interesting question, but I am willing to make that exchange. Now,
But you just agreed in principle to screening all the good guys in order to catch the occasional bad guy. So why is that okay at the Bellagio, but not in the streets of San Francisco?
Well, because in the Bellagio, Scott, I am entering a piece of private property where exceedingly large amounts of cash are being transacted on a minute by minute basis, and cheating is endemic. And I am entering an area that I understand these terms and conditions. Now, the difference between this and having facial recognition technology at a park, let's say Central Park in New York, for example, in order to determine whether or not there are criminals entering the park, is an entirely different thing. This is a public space, and virtually everything I do when I leave my house occurs in a public space, and I do not expect to be surveilled there, and I will not countenance it either, because I haven't done anything wrong, and I will fight to the death the assumption that either I've done something wrong or I might do something wrong, and therefore I have to be watched. It's anathema to the entire idea of freedom.
But in effect, you've also signed over to the Bellagio and, frankly, to the local, Nevada Police Department. You've signed over the potential that the Bellagio could say, yes, officer, we'd be glad to provide you with all our videos and all our facial recognition technology to help you catch some bad guy that you're chasing after. So when you walk into that Bellagio, even though it's only their facial recognition technology that's being used, it could wind up in the hands of the police, could it not?
Yes. It could end up in the hands of the police. You would assume that it would end up in the hands of the police because there was sufficient probable cause in order to find out what I was doing. But I'm willing to even put that aside. I am willing to make that compromise, but that is a volitional restriction on my part. The same way that if I go to Holland, or if I were to travel to Thailand. And I've been to Thailand, if I travel to Thailand, I accept the fact that I cannot stand on a street corner and criticize the king of Thailand. I can't do it. I'll be arrested. It is a right that I would expect to have protected in the United States. I don't expect it to be there in Thailand. And furthermore, I don't expect it's reasonable for me to expect it to be there in Thailand. And so if I'm going to go to Thailand, I accept the fact that there are restrictions on my behavior in Thailand that don't exist inside the United States.
So the beauty of a constitutional...
I make this exact same calculation when I go into a casino.
The beauty of a constitutional republic with a free enterprise system is that the moment you step into one of those free enterprises, you give up your constitutional rights.
The beauty of a free enterprise system, constitutionally protected rights in a capitalist system, is that you have the ability to make a decision as a free person whether or not you want to abide by the rules of the person that owned the property. And this is the same kind of, it's no different than no shoes, no shirt, no service. I am willing to agree to the owner of that property's terms for his use on his property with my awareness. And if I don't like it, I don't have to go there. There's nothing contradictory about this. When you say that I've sold out Republicans, I may have sold out some Republicans with this stamp. I haven't sold out any conservatives. Of that, I am quite sure.
No more questions, Your Honor. We want to thank the members at BillWhittle.com for providing the funding that makes it possible for us to produce and distribute this kind of programming 5 days a week. There are a total of some 44 shows a month that
48.
Are produced. How is it 48? You keep saying 48.
Yes, 5 right angles,
yes.
5 Bill Whittle Nows.
Each week.
4 firewalls and 4 stratosphere lounges.
Oh, I forgot the stratosphere lounge.
Well, that's
my
3
goodness.
hours of entertainment right there.
Am I going to get smacked down
night.
there? Okay, well, we just increased our production by some 10%. Actually, I have no idea if it's 10%. I don't do the math. But ladies and gentlemen, the folks at BillWhittle.com are the producers of this content and the producers of content of their own, from their own hand, by the way, at the member exclusive blog that you can enjoy when you go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link and sign up with your voluntary monthly or annual contribution. We're grateful to the folks who have done that. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this happen.